We have breaking news that we're following in Sean Diddy Combs' racketeering and sex trafficking trial. In just moments, Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, is set to retake the stand and face what we expect to be her final round of questioning under cross-examination.
Lester, that's right. It was an illuminating first day of court. Combs entered the courtroom wearing a crew-neck sweater and a white button-down shirt. He had some gray in his hair and in his goatee. And at one point, he told the judge that he needed to use the bathroom and that he was feeling a little bit nervous.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life. Sometimes you got to do that. I was fucked up. I mean, I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable.
Now, also, several celebrities were named today, although they haven't been accused of any wrongdoing. They might be mentioned during the course of the trial. Their names are Michael B. Jordan, Mike Myers, Kanye West, and his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, who has accused him of years of physical and emotional abuse. And she is expected to testify during the trial. Now, Combs has vehemently denied all of the allegations against him. I also want to point out that celebrity attorney Marc Agnifilo, he was present in the courtroom. His daughter is Tenny Agnifilo, one of the lead attorneys for Combs throughout this trial. Now, a source telling NBC News that he hasn't joined the team, but he is advising on jury selection.
Combs wants that video or videos excluded from trial. And for that, we turn to his motion in limine to exclude video footage of that March 5th, 2016 incident. Motion in limine is a pretrial motion that aims at preventing evidence from coming into trial or limiting it in some way. And it starts by saying, quote, "There is no longer any dispute that the CNN footage from March 5th, 2016 at the Intercontinental Hotel offered by the government at 3 separate bail hearings is wholly inaccurate, having been altered, manipulated, sped up, and edited to be out of sequence. As indicated below, CNN paid Redacted, don't know who this person is, Redacted, for footage, copied that footage in unknown ways, presented that footage out of order, and destroyed the original. Accordingly, all the footage from CNN is inaccurate and inadmissible. As for the 2 items of footage filmed by an iPhone 6, those pieces of footage are inaccurate and inadmissible as well for the reasons set out below. Combs' request from the court is to hold a hearing. And at this hearing, Combs explains that his team wants to call a forensic video analysis named Connor McCourt to show that this video evidence is inaccurate. Sean Combs' defense team argues the videos are unreliable, that they would unfairly confuse and mislead the jury, that they would be more prejudicial to Combs than it would provide any kind of relevant or probative value for the prosecution's case.
Cassie Ventura broke her silence in court with emotional, detailed testimony about her long relationship with Sean Diddy Combs. She described years of emotional manipulation, control, and disturbing incidents behind closed doors. But just when it looked like the story was finally tilting in her favor, Diddy's legal team made a move that shocked the entire courtroom and the internet. Cassie had already taken the stand. Her words were powerful, her account deeply personal. She didn't just paint a picture of a relationship gone wrong. She described a pattern that left her feeling trapped and powerless. For many watching, it was a turning point in the case. She wasn't just a former partner. She was someone who claimed to have endured a hidden storm while the world saw only the red carpets and music videos. But then came the twist. Diddy's lawyer, Marc Agnifilo, stood before the judge and jury and said something that shifted the tone of the entire trial. He admitted there had been troubling moments in the relationship, but added, there was blame on both sides. In other words, Diddy wasn't denying the issues. He was saying they were mutual. The statement was bold. It wasn't a flat denial. It was a calculated strategy. Suggests that the conflicts were shared, that they weren't one-sided. His team is now positioning the relationship as something messy, complicated, and emotionally charged from both ends, not something dominated by one person. Online, reactions were immediate. Some compared it to previous celebrity courtroom battles, where personal relationships became public battlegrounds. Others raised concerns that calling it mutual downplays Cassie's pain and risks turning serious claims into a blame game. So, what does this strategy actually mean for the trial? Can painting the relationship as two-sided change the jury's perspective? And most importantly, what does this say about how public figures frame accountability when their private lives are suddenly under a microscope? To really understand the weight of Diddy's claim, we need to rewind back to where it all started and how Cassie ended up tied to one of the most powerful men in the music industry. At first glance, Diddy and Cassie might have looked like a glamorous industry couple. Chart-topping music, designer red carpet looks, high-profile events. But beneath all the glitz, Cassie's courtroom statements suggest a completely different reality. She wasn't just Diddy's partner, she was also his employee, his artist, and someone whose every major career move depended on his approval. Cassie was only 19 when she signed with Diddy's label, Bad Boy Records. He wasn't just her boss, he was the gatekeeper to her future. According to her testimony, nearly every part of her life became dependent on him. From music releases to living arrangements, Diddy allegedly had the final say. She spoke about being isolated, controlled, and told what to wear, where to go, and who to talk to. That's where the heart of this debate lies. When one person holds all the power in a relationship, financial, professional, and emotional, can their interactions ever truly be mutual? Diddy's team argues that things were complicated, emotional, and yes, sometimes heated. But critics quickly pointed out that this isn't just about emotional back and forth, it's about who controlled the chessboard the entire time. Legal experts and advocates say you can't ignore the imbalance when evaluating this kind of claim. The person who signs the checks, owns the music rights, and runs the business has a kind of leverage that changes everything.
The singer Cassie says the incidents occurred throughout her 10-year relationship with Combs.
Even more revealing, Cassie's longtime friend testified in court that she'd often express fear that speaking out would cost her everything. Not just her music career, but her reputation, her safety, and her future. So when Diddy's team now says that both sides were involved in the conflict, many are asking, was it really a two-way street? Or just a very well-controlled maze? And while much of this remained private for years, one moment captured on camera would change everything and become the visual that sparked nationwide attention. It was a short clip, just a few seconds long, but it was enough to silence the room. Back in 2016, Cassie and Diddy were staying at a luxury hotel in Beverly Hills. What happened in that hallway that night had long been whispered about, until it was played out on courtroom monitors for everyone to see. Security footage submitted as evidence during the trial showed Cassie trying to leave their suite. She looked visibly upset, holding her phone and heading toward the elevator. Then Diddy appeared, rushing after her. In those few seconds, the footage showed Cassie being grabbed and dragged back toward their room. She managed to break free and flee, barefoot, shaken, and alone. This wasn't just hearsay anymore, it was a moment frozen in time, captured by a hotel camera, undeniable and public. And it completely changed the tone of the trial. Cassie told the court that she was trying to leave after an argument, and that she felt afraid. Her legal team said this moment was the turning point for her.
Her suit was filed under a law that allows alleged sexual offense victims to file past the statute of limitations. Cassie says she wanted to speak out before that law expires next week.
When she realized the situation had spiraled beyond her control, a short while later, a settlement was signed behind closed doors. But now, that moment has resurfaced in court, not as a closed chapter, but as a central piece of the story. Diddy's team didn't deny the footage, but they framed it as part of a complicated, emotional exchange between two people who were deeply involved. Again, the word mutual was used. But for those watching, especially jurors, one question keeps surfacing. If Cassie was the one fleeing, barefoot and alone, with hotel staff stepping in, how mutual could this really have been? And that hallway moment? It was only one part of what Cassie says she experienced during their years together. What she described next in court left everyone stunned and raised even more questions about power, pressure, and what she was really up against. When Cassie took the stand, the courtroom leaned in, not because she was emotional or dramatic, but because the details she shared were chilling, calculated, and calmly delivered. According to her, the relationship wasn't just about disagreements or emotional ups and downs. She described a world built on pressure, manipulation, and a constant fear of consequences. She spoke about being pressured into attending private parties, events that weren't about fun or celebration. These were situations, she said, where expectations were silently understood. Cassie claimed she was pushed into doing things she didn't want to do, often under the influence of substances she didn't freely choose.
Mr. Combs has denied all the allegations. For more, let's bring in entertainment attorney Dante Mills. So Dante, thanks for being with us. Cassie has signed with that label when she was just 19 and Sean Combs was 37. What's alleged to have happened after that?
Thank you for having me, Catherine. So in this lawsuit, I just wanted to be clear, this is a civil lawsuit.
All of this, she said, was framed as part of the lifestyle. Say no, and her music would be shelved, pushed back, and she'd be cut off. The defense responded by pointing to text messages and conversations where Cassie appeared cooperative, even enthusiastic. But trauma experts quickly explained that compliance doesn't always mean comfort. In high-control relationships, people often go along just to keep the peace or survive the moment. What made this even more complex was the emotional hold Cassie described. She said there were moments of kindness, promises of success, even apologies. But those brief highs, she claimed, were followed by sudden emotional lows, often used to keep her off balance. It wasn't about affection, it was about control masked as love. And remember, Diddy's team is still framing all of this as mutual, that the relationship had emotional highs and lows on both sides. But critics ask, when one person holds your contract, your home, and your future, is anything truly mutual? For many in the courtroom, this testimony peeled back the curtain on what celebrity relationships can look like behind the scenes, when fame and control mix in the most private spaces. But it wasn't just Cassie's word that stunned the court. Other witnesses stepped up, friends, insiders, and former collaborators, backing up her story with their own disturbing memories. Cassie's story didn't stand alone. As the trial continued, the prosecution brought in witnesses, people who had been around the couple during their time together, and what they shared added even more weight to Cassie's side of the story. One of the most talked about testimonies came from singer Dawn Richard, a former member of Diddy's girl group, Danity Kane. She wasn't just a fellow artist, she was someone who had spent time behind the scenes, in the same rooms, during some of Diddy and Cassie's most tense moments. In court, Dawn shared an incident where she said she witnessed a disturbing outburst, where Cassie was left visibly shaken. Her voice trembled as she told the jury she couldn't forget what she saw. Then came Carrie Morgan, one of Cassie's closest friends at the time. Her testimony echoed Cassie's, stories of sudden mood changes, emotional pressure, and moments that left Cassie afraid and unsure. Morgan said she once begged Cassie to walk away for good, fearing that things would only get worse. What stood out wasn't just the content of these stories, it was the consistency. These weren't random accounts, they were memories shared by people who had seen things up close, long before Cassie ever spoke out publicly. Diddy's legal team pushed back, questioning the motives behind these testimonies. Were they looking for attention, trying to ride the media wave? But the witnesses stayed firm. They weren't there for headlines, they said. They were there because, finally, someone had asked them to tell the truth. And that truth, according to them, painted a picture that went far beyond a messy relationship. It was about imbalance, pressure, and emotional control that stretched far beyond the spotlight. But even as the witnesses poured out support for Cassie, Diddy's legal team stuck to their narrative, that this was a complex, emotionally fueled relationship where both sides had moments of fault. So why are experts saying this mutual defense might backfire completely?
Get out of the way!
On paper, Diddy's legal team might think they've found a clever way to soften the damage, admit that things weren't perfect, but claim that both he and Cassie played a role in the emotional fallout. It's the classic relationship gone wrong narrative. But legal experts and advocacy groups are already warning this move could be riskier than it looks. Here's why. In situations where one person holds the power, financial, professional, and personal, it becomes incredibly difficult to label the relationship as truly mutual. From the very start, Diddy wasn't just Cassie's boyfriend. He was her mentor, her employer, and the face behind every opportunity she received. When that kind of influence exists, it creates an environment where going along with things doesn't always mean agreement, it can mean survival. Legal analysts have pointed out that juries today are more informed about this dynamic than ever before. The public has seen how power plays out in high-profile relationships, and the old argument of both sides messed up doesn't hold as much weight anymore, especially when surveillance footage, contracts, and multiple witness testimonies all point in one direction. There's also the danger of appearing inconsistent. If Diddy says the relationship was loving and supportive, but also volatile on both sides, it raises questions. Which version is the truth? And why only admit things after Cassie went public? Public perception matters too. Social media is filled with posts questioning the sincerity of this defense. Hashtags supporting Cassie continue to trend, And more people are calling out what they see as an attempt to shift blame rather than take accountability. By framing the situation as mutual, Diddy's team may be trying to create gray areas. But in the courtroom, and in the court of public opinion, gray areas don't always help when there's already a clear picture forming. And outside the courtroom, that picture is spreading fast. Public reaction, social media trends, and brand backlash are now playing their own role in shaping the outcome of this case.
We're getting a look at new video from last month's raid at Sean Diddy Combs' home in Holby Hills. The mother of one of his sons shared the video on Instagram, calling it an excessive use of force. The footage was edited and sped up.
While the courtroom arguments unfold in real time, the world outside isn't waiting for a verdict. Social media has become its own kind of trial. Faster, louder, and often just as influential. Within hours of Diddy's mutual defense hitting the headlines, hashtags like "Nar I Stand With Cassie" and "Napt Accountability Matters" began trending across platforms. TikTok creators broke down courtroom transcripts, Twitter lit up with debates, Reddit threads dissected body language, legal strategies, and whether this was all just damage control in disguise. And it didn't stop with fan reactions. Brands started quietly stepping back. A fitness company removed Diddy's playlists from its app. Beverage partners paused promotional campaigns. Industry insiders leaked that his music catalog, once valued at hundreds of millions, might be quietly shopped to private buyers. Because here's the thing, when trust is shaken in public, it hits everything: image, influence, and income. Supporters of Cassie say the defense's strategy only made her more credible. If she wasn't telling the truth, one post read, why is he suddenly agreeing halfway? Others noted how the shift to mutual only came after Cassie had already spoken out in court, suggesting that the move was reactive, not honest. And let's not forget, this is playing out in an era where audiences are deeply tuned into patterns of control, manipulation, and power imbalance. Many viewers grew up watching these stars. Now, they're watching them answer to decades-old behavior, and they're not afraid to speak up when something doesn't feel right. Even if the legal system takes its time, the public already seems to be drawing conclusions. And in a culture where reputation often moves faster than reality, that alone can change the course of everything, from career to legacy. So, as this high-stakes trial pushes forward, the final stretch is approaching fast. And with new witnesses, legal experts, and even bigger questions still looming, the next chapter might just be the one that decides it all.
We also learned that they want to use text messages between Cassie Ventura and Diddy discussing the freak-offs. They are saying that these text messages are a strong piece of evidence because they are going to corroborate everything that Cassie Ventura says in her testimony against Diddy.
As the courtroom drama nears its final chapters, one thing is clear. This case is no longer just about a high-profile breakup or even the truth behind a private relationship. It's about narrative. Who controls it? Who shapes it? And who ultimately pays the price when that narrative begins to crack? Cassie testified first, laying out years of emotional turmoil and power imbalance. Then came the footage, the witnesses, and the visible fallout. Diddy's team responded not with denial, but with a strategic shift, claiming that the turmoil was shared, that it was emotional on both sides, that it was mutual. But that word, mutual, has become the flashpoint. Supporters say it's a smart legal strategy meant to neutralize sympathy. Critics argue it minimizes Cassie's experience and distracts from the issue of power. And somewhere in the middle, a jury is left to sort through the noise, the headlines, and the contradictions. The stakes? They're enormous. Diddy isn't just fighting for his name, he's fighting for his legacy. His business empire, brand partnerships, and future in music are all riding on how this story lands. Cassie, on the other hand, has already risked everything by coming forward. For her, the court's decision may not rewrite the past, but it might finally validate what she's carried in silence for so long. In the end, this case may not come down to who had the last word, but who had the most believable one. Because in today's world, where private lives unravel in public view and influence can disappear in a single news cycle, one question echoes louder than any defense argument.
It provides direct evidence that Diddy used violence to force and coerce her to engage in these freak-offs. They are saying that this part is so important because Diddy's argument in this criminal trial is going to be that everything was consensual, but they are saying that these text messages are going to show something totally different.
Is it still accountability? If you only speak up after being called out? Whether the jury sees mutual conflict or a one-sided hold disguised as love will determine not just the outcome of this trial, but how future stories like this are told and remembered. And for a man who built an empire on controlling the narrative, this might be the one story he can't rewrite.